My son sold my house while I was lying in a hospital bed. He had the papers signed, the deed transferred, and the money deposited into his account before I even knew what was happening. But in his rush to take everything, he forgot one small detail, and that detail cost him absolutely everything. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Please like this video and listen to my story until the very end because the most important part comes in the last few minutes. And tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I want to see how far this story has traveled. It means more to me than you know. My name is Margaret Holloway. I am 74 years old. And until 18 months ago, I lived in the same white house on Sycamore Lane in Dayton, Ohio, where I had spent the last 31 years of my life. I want you to picture that house for a moment. Not because it was grand, it wasn't. It was a 3-bedroom colonial with a covered porch, a rose garden along the left side that I had planted myself in 1994, and a kitchen window that faced east so I had sunlight every morning while I made my coffee. The carpet in the living room was worn in one particular spot near the armchair, because that is where I sat every single evening for 3 decades. The house knew me, and I knew every creak, every smell, every shadow in it. I raised my son, Daniel, in that house. His bedroom was the second door on the right. I painted it blue when he was 7 because he begged me to. I can still see the height marks on the door frame where I measured him every birthday from age 4 to 16. He stopped letting me after that. Boys do. His father, my husband Robert, died of a stroke in 2009. After that, it was just Daniel and me, and then eventually just me. Daniel married a woman named Sasha in 2014. They moved to Columbus. I visited when I was wanted, which became less and less frequent after their second child was born. I thought we were close. I believed that completely. I was wrong. It started the way these things always do with small things I explained away. In the spring of last year, Daniel began calling more regularly. Not the brief, distracted calls where I could hear his children in the background and he was clearly driving. Focused calls. Questions about the house. Had I thought about downsizing? Did I know what property values were doing in Dayton right now? Had I ever considered one of those retirement communities, the nice ones, not the depressing kind? I told him I was perfectly happy where I was. I had my garden. I had my neighbor Paulette, who came for tea on Thursdays. I had my routines. He would pause after I said these things. A particular kind of pause that I had learned, in 74 years of living, means someone is recalculating rather than accepting. Then in July, I had what my doctor called a cardiac episode. Nothing catastrophic, but serious enough that I was admitted to St. Vincent's Hospital for 11 days. 11 days of monitoring, medication adjustments, and the particular indignity of being in a place where the lights never fully go dark and someone checks on you every 2 hours through the night. Daniel came the first day. He sat beside my bed for 3 hours, held my hand, brought me a plant that dropped all its leaves within a week. He kissed my forehead when he left and said, "Don't worry about anything, Mom. I'll handle everything." I thought he meant he would water my roses. I was discharged on a Tuesday. My neighbor Paulette drove me home because Daniel said he couldn't get away from work that particular day. But he'd come that weekend. I remember being so relieved to turn onto Sycamore Lane. After 11 days of hospital air and hospital sounds, just the sight of my own porch made my shoulders drop 2 inches. Paulette pulled into the driveway and stopped the car. She didn't get out right away. "Margaret," she said, and her voice had something careful in it. "I need to tell you something before you go inside." I looked at her. "There was a man here, 3 days after you went to the hospital. He had a truck and 2 other men with him. They went in and out for most of the day, and then 4 days after that, a couple came. They walked around the outside, went in, spent about an hour. They had a real estate agent with them. The air in the car felt suddenly thinner. The sign went up 6 days ago," Paulette said. She pointed. I looked. There was a sold sticker across the corner of it. My hands, resting in my lap, had gone completely still. Not shaking, just still. The way things go still right before something breaks. "Who?" I said. Not a question. A sound. Paulette put her hand over mine. I went inside. The house was not empty. My furniture was still there. Most of it. But things were missing. My mother's china cabinet from the dining room. Robert's desk from the small office at the end of the hall. The box of photographs I kept on the shelf in the bedroom closet. Daniel had been in my house while I was in the hospital. I sat down on the worn spot in the living room carpet, and I did not cry. I had learned, somewhere in 74 years, that there are moments too large for tears. You just have to sit inside them until you can breathe again. I sat for 20 minutes. Then I picked up my phone and called my daughter-in-law, Sasha. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret, how are you feeling? Daniel said you were discharged today." "Sasha," I said, "I need you to tell me what Daniel has done with my house." A pause, longer than it should have been. He mentioned talking to you about it. He said you two had discussed. "We discussed nothing," I said. "Tell me what he did." Another pause. Then, carefully, "He said you had given him power of attorney. He said you wanted to sell while the market was good. He said." I hung up the phone. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. Not rage. Not yet. Something colder. Something methodical. Because here is the thing about being 74 years old. You have survived enough to know that panic is a luxury you cannot afford. If you panic, you hand control to the person who wronged you, and I was not prepared to do that. I went to the small filing cabinet in the office. Robert's desk was gone, but the filing cabinet was still there, pushed against the wall. Daniel had either not noticed it or not thought it worth taking. This was his first mistake. I am a meticulous woman. Robert used to say I could produce a receipt from 1987 if you ask me nicely. He was not wrong. I opened the bottom drawer, and I found what I was looking for within 4 minutes. My copy of the power of attorney document I had signed in 2019 when I had my knee replacement and wanted Daniel to be able to handle minor financial matters if I was incapacitated. I read it carefully. Then I read it again. The document was a *** limited, specific power of attorney ***. It covered medical decisions and access to my checking account for household bills during a period of incapacitation. It explicitly, the word was right there, *explicitly times excluded the authority to sell, transfer, or encumber real property. My house? He had no legal authority to sell my house. I held the document in my hands for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone. Not to call Daniel. Not yet. I called a woman named Carol Simmons, who had been my neighbor before she retired and became a paralegal, and who owed me 14 years of Thursday teas and honest conversation. "Carol," I said, "I need the name of the best real estate attorney in Dayton, and I need it tonight." His name was Arthur Gaines. Carol called in a favor, and he met with me the very next morning, a Wednesday, in his office on 3rd Street. He was 60 years old, silver-haired, and had the particular quality of stillness that I have always associated with people who have heard everything and are no longer surprised by any of it. I put the power of attorney document on his desk. I put the sale timeline Paulette had written down for me, dates, times, descriptions of the men she had seen on his desk beside it. I told him everything, in order, without drama. He read the document. He looked at his computer for several minutes, pulling up county records. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at me. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, "do you know what your son forgot?" "Tell me," I said. "He forgot that a limited power of attorney cannot be used to convey real property in the state of Ohio. That requires either a general, durable power of attorney or a specific real estate power of attorney with particular statutory language." He turned his computer screen toward me. "The deed transfer has been recorded with the county, but it was executed using a document that did not authorize it." He paused. "The sale is voidable, potentially void entirely." Something moved through me that was not quite triumph and not quite relief. Something cleaner than both. "What does that mean for the buyers?" I asked. Because I am practical, and I was already thinking 3 steps ahead. "It means they received a potentially defective title. Their title insurance will have to sort that out. That is not your problem to solve, it is your son's." He looked at me steadily. "Mrs. Holloway, your son may have committed fraud. Specifically, elder financial abuse under Ohio law, which carries both civil and criminal penalties." I folded my hands in my lap. "Good," I said quietly. "What do we do first?" Arthur filed an emergency motion to void the deed transfer that Thursday. I did not call Daniel. I want you to understand that choice clearly. I had nothing to say to him that would not tip him off before the legal machinery had engaged. Arthur had been explicit. Do not contact him. Document everything. Stay calm. So I stayed calm. On Friday morning, at 11:47, my phone rang. Daniel. His voice was controlled in the way that told me immediately he had been notified. Mom. A pause. I need to explain. You sold my house, Daniel. Mom, I was trying to. You sold my house while I was in the hospital, while I was attached to a heart monitor. You drove to my home, took items that belonged to me and to your father's memory, and transferred the deed of my property using a legal document that did not authorize you to do so. I kept my voice level. That is what happened. There is no explanation for that. There is only what happens next. Silence on the line. Then, Mom, I needed the money. Sasha and I the business debt. It's been. You will hear from my attorney, I said, and I hung up. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from weakness. From the particular physical sensation of having crossed a line you have spent a lifetime avoiding. It felt like stepping off a porch in the dark and finding solid ground where you expected nothing. The legal process took 4 months. Arthur filed the deed voiding action. The buyers, a young couple named Torres who had no idea what Daniel had done, were horrified and cooperative. Their title insurance company launched its own investigation, which added considerable pressure to Daniel's position. He now had not just my attorney, but an insurance company's legal team examining every document he had touched. Arthur also referred the matter to the county prosecutor's office for review under Ohio's elder abuse statutes. 3 weeks after filing, Daniel's attorney contacted Arthur with an offer. Daniel would reverse any remaining asset transfers, return the items he had taken from the house, and pay restitution of $40,000, which was the profit he had retained after the sale expenses, in exchange for my agreement not to pursue criminal charges. I sat in Arthur's office and read the offer. $40,000. The house had sold for $260,000. Daniel had used the money to pay down business debts, which meant recovering the full amount was complicated. What is your honest assessment? I asked Arthur. Civilly, we can push for more, but it will take longer and cost more in fees. The criminal referral gives you leverage, but criminal prosecution is the prosecutor's decision, not yours. He looked at me carefully. What matters most to you, Margaret? I thought about that question for a long moment. My house, I said. I want my house back. Arthur was already nodding. That is what the deed voiding action achieves. The Torres family's title insurance settles with them. The original transfer is voided. Title reverts to you. He paused. The $40,000 is separate. That is about Daniel's accountability. Then I want both, I said. We negotiated for 3 weeks. Daniel, it turned out, was more frightened of the criminal referral than of the civil action. His attorney communicated this through increasingly urgent calls to Arthur. The prosecutor's office had expressed interest in the case elder financial abuse was being taken seriously in Ohio, and a case this clear, with documentary evidence this strong, was exactly the kind they pursued. The final agreement. Full deed restitution. The house returned to my name. $2,000 in restitution, drawn from a home equity line on Daniel and Sasha's Columbus house. Return of all items removed from my property, or fair market replacement value for anything he could not produce, and a formal, witnessed acknowledgement that he had acted without legal authority. I did not agree not to cooperate with the prosecutor. That decision would remain mine. In the end, the prosecutor declined to file charges not because the case was weak, but because I was made whole and the civil resolution was complete. I was given the option to submit a victim impact statement for the record. I submitted one, 4 pages. I did not send a copy to Daniel. The record does not need my help to speak for itself. On a Tuesday morning in March, Arthur called me at 8 o'clock. It is done, he said. The deed is recorded in your name. As of this morning, you own your house. I was sitting at my kitchen table. The east-facing window was letting in the early light exactly the way it always had. The roses along the left side of the house had not been watered properly in 6 months, and I already had a list of what needed to be done. Thank you, Arthur, I said. You did the work, he said. I just filed the papers. Paulette came for tea that Thursday. We sat on the covered porch and she brought a lemon cake and we talked about everything and nothing for 2 hours. She had been my witness, my first ally, the person who stood in a driveway and told me the truth when it would have been easier not to. "He really thought you wouldn't fight," she said. Not quite a question. "He thought I was too sick and too old and too grateful for his help to look closely at what he was doing," I said. "He forgot that I am the woman who kept every document from 30 years of this house." She smiled. "He forgot who raised him." "He did?" I said. "That was his small detail. I want to tell you where things stand now. My house is mine. I repainted the front porch this spring, a soft green that Robert always said he would get around to. The rose garden is coming back. My mother's china cabinet was not recoverable. Daniel had sold it, but he paid its appraised value, and I found something I like better at an estate sale in April. Daniel and I have not spoken since the agreement was signed. His children, my grandchildren, are 7 and 4, and I have written each of them a letter to be given to them when they are adults, telling them who their grandmother is and what she stood for. I will not be erased from their story, even if I am excluded from their daily lives. That decision belongs to time, not to Daniel. Sasha sent me a card in October. No message, just her signature. I put it in the filing cabinet. As for the filing cabinet itself, I have reorganized it completely. Everything labeled, everything dated, everything in its place. I told Arthur about it when we had our final meeting. He laughed. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, "that filing cabinet saved you." "No," I said. "Robert's insistence that I keep it saved me. He has been gone 16 years and he still protected this house. I meant that. Here is what I learned at 74 years old. Know what you have signed. Every document, every line, every word. The paper you forget about is the one someone else remembers. Keep records as if your life depends on them because sometimes your home does. And never, in any circumstance, mistake someone's silence for acceptance." I was quiet for 4 months while the legal process moved. Daniel mistook that quietness for defeat. It was the opposite. It was me, doing what needed to be done, on my timeline, in my way. I was 74 when my son sold the house I had lived in for 31 years. I was 74 when I got it back. I am 74 now, sitting in my armchair, on the worn patch of carpet, watching the evening light cross the living room floor exactly the way it always has. I have never been more at home. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted Daniel immediately or waited, and built your case carefully? Leave your answer in the comments below. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for being here with me. From Stories of Margaret, it is never too late to stand up for what is yours. Never.